You already know what you should be doing. You know you should eat better, sleep more, stop procrastinating, call your parents back, save money, exercise. You've been told. Probably 100 times. By people who love you, by experts, by books, by your own past self writing sticky notes to your future self. And yet, here we are. This isn't a video about giving you more advice. This is a video about why advice, even great advice, almost never works. And what's actually going on inside your brain when you hear it. Because once you understand that, everything changes. Here's something strange. Studies show that people actively seek out advice from friends, from Google, from therapists, from YouTube videos like this one. We want guidance, but then we don't follow it. A 2022 study published in the journal Psychological Science found that people consistently underweight advice from others, even when those people are objectively more knowledgeable. Researchers called it the advisor's curse. The smarter and more qualified the advice giver, the more likely the recipient is to feel defensive and reject it. So it's not that we ignore bad advice, we ignore good advice, especially good advice. Why? The answer isn't laziness, it's not stupidity, it's something much deeper and much more human. Psychologists have a term called psychological reactance. It's the instinct we have to push back when we feel our freedom is being threatened. The moment someone tells you what to do, a part of your brain registers it as a threat to your autonomy, your sense of control over your own life, and so it fights back. This is why teenagers rebel against parents who give perfectly reasonable advice. It's why you eat the burger right after your doctor tells you to cut back on red meat. It's not spite, it's survival wiring. Your brain is protecting its sense of agency. The advice might be right, but it doesn't feel like your idea, and that makes all the difference. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Sometimes advice threatens not just our choices, but our identity. If you've been telling yourself for years that you're a night owl who can't wake up early, and someone gives you advice about a 5 a.m. morning routine, you're not just rejecting the routine, you're protecting the story you've built about who you are. Accepting good advice can sometimes feel like admitting you've been wrong, and the brain treats being wrong as a social threat, almost as dangerous as physical harm. This is called identity protective cognition. We filter information through the lens of our self-image. If advice doesn't fit the image, we discard it. Not because it's bad, but because it's incompatible with our internal narrative. This next one is subtle but crucial. There's a difference between knowing something and feeling something. Advice lives in the rational brain, but behavior is driven by emotion, habit, and environment, none of which are particularly impressed by logic. You can know that exercise will make you feel better, but at 6 p.m. when you're exhausted and the couch is right there, your emotional brain, running on autopilot, wins every time. The advice is correct. The knowledge is there, but the knowing hasn't been wired into the feeling. And until it does, the advice just sits there, inert. We also don't just evaluate advice. We evaluate who's giving it. Research shows we're far more likely to follow advice from someone we perceive as similar to us. Not necessarily more expert, but more like us. Same struggles, same background, same walk of life. A billionaire telling you to wake up at 4 a.m. and take cold showers registers differently than your friend who just paid off his debt telling you the same thing. Context matters. Credibility isn't just about credentials, it's about connection. Here's something most self-help content won't say. Good advice is almost always obvious. Exercise, sleep, eat real food. Don't spend more than you earn. Be honest. Set boundaries. Be present with the people you love. None of this is new. None of this is surprising. If I asked you right now to write down the top 5 things you could do to improve your life, you could probably do it in 60 seconds. So the information was never the problem. The problem is that we've framed advice as a knowledge problem when it's actually an emotional problem. We don't need more information. We need safety to change without feeling like we're betraying ourselves. We need momentum, small wins that rewire the brain to believe change is possible. We need emotional resonance, advice that feels true, not just sounds true. And we need autonomy, the sense that the decision came from us, not someone else. The most effective advice isn't advice at all. It's a story, a question, an experience that shifts how you feel, and therefore what you do. So if advice doesn't work, why do we keep seeking it? Because asking for advice feels productive. It scratches the itch of wanting to change without requiring actual change. Psychologists call this substitution. When the real goal, transformation, feels overwhelming, we substitute it with a more accessible behavior, gathering information that creates the feeling of progress without the discomfort of action. Sound familiar? Watching YouTube videos about productivity instead of working. Reading books about discipline instead of practicing it. Asking for advice instead of sitting with the discomfort of making a hard decision. We're not broken, we're just human. The brain is extraordinarily good at making inaction feel like action. Okay, so what do you actually do with all of this? First, ask better questions instead of seeking advice. Instead of, what should I do? Ask yourself, what would I do if I wasn't afraid? Or, what would I tell a friend in this situation? Research shows we give better, more rational advice to others than to ourselves. Flip the frame. Become your own advisor. Second, make it your idea. The best advice is advice you talk yourself into. When you feel ownership over a decision, even if someone else planted the seed, you're far more likely to follow through. This is why therapists don't tell you what to do. They ask questions that lead you to the answer, because your brain will fight external direction but follow internal conviction. Third, lower the stakes of being wrong. Advice feels threatening when change feels permanent or costly. Make it an experiment instead of a commitment. Don't commit to going to the gym. Try going 3 times this week and see how it feels. You're not changing your identity, you're just running a test. The brain finds that a lot less scary. Here's the real reason you're not following good advice. It's not because you're lazy. It's not because you don't care. It's because advice, at its core, is just information. And information alone has never changed a human being. What changes people is experience, emotion, identity, community, and the quiet, private moment when they decide, on their own terms, that they're ready. So stop beating yourself up for knowing the right thing and not doing it. That's not a character flaw. That's how brains work. The question isn't, why don't I follow good advice? The question is, what would have to be true for me to actually want to change? That's the question worth sitting with. If this video made you think, subscribe, because that's the kind of thinking we do here every week. And drop a comment below. What's one piece of advice you know is right, but still haven't taken? No judgment. I'll actually read them. See you in the next one.